It grinned at you from the screen, that massive green face with razor-sharp teeth, frozen in a devilish smile that seemed to know exactly what you feared. Not a monster, not a ghost, just a truck. But somehow Stephen King turned a simple semi into one of cinema's most disturbing villains. This was Maximum Overdrive, King's first and only time behind the camera. A film where machines came alive, humanity lost control, and one truck ruled them all, the Green Goblin rig. It wasn't just any truck. It was a nightmare on 18 wheels roaring through highways and straight into pop culture legend. The eerie face glaring from its front wasn't an accident. It was Marvel's own Green Goblin, officially licensed for a horror movie about killer vehicles. And behind that fiberglass grin, chaos. Engines overheating, fiberglass, melting stunt drivers sweating in North Carolina heat, and a director so wired on cocaine, he later admitted he barely remembered making the movie. Decades later, that same truck, once a terror of the screen, would lie forgotten in a scrapyard, half-burned, rusted, and smiling into oblivion. Until a man named Tim Shockey decided to save it, sparking a resurrection that would transform the cursed prop into a cult icon. This isn't just a story about a movie car. It's about madness turned mechanical fame born from failure, and how a broken truck with a demonic grin somehow outlived its own movie. So buckle up, because we're counting down 20 weird facts about Handy's 1977 Green Goblin Truck from Maximum Overdrive. And trust me, by the time we hit 1, you'll understand why Stephen King never directed again. 20. The Marvel Connection nobody talks about. Before Marvel built an empire with the Avengers, it was a scrappy licensing company trying to survive the 1980s. And that's where the story takes a wonderfully bizarre turn. That menacing green face on the truck. It wasn't just inspired by the Green Goblin. It was the Green Goblin. Officially licensed. Yes, Marvel Comics gave Stephen King permission to use Spider-Man's archenemy for a movie about killer machines. Imagine that meeting. Someone walks into Marvel's office with a pitch. So, we're making a movie where trucks come to life and murder people. We want to slap the Green Goblin's face on the front of one. And Marvel says, sure, why not? It's the kind of decision that could only happen in the Wild West of 1980s Hollywood, long before the Disney lawyers and billion-dollar franchises. Back then, all it took was a signature, a handshake, and maybe a modest check. The mask itself wasn't a Halloween prop either. It was a massive fiberglass sculpture, custom built specifically for Maximum Overdrive, a professional piece of movie craftsmanship with haunting accuracy to the comic book villain. Its exaggerated eyes, razor grin, and lime green surface were designed to look equally terrifying in daylight or under flickering headlights. And yet the irony is perfect, a symbol of comic book fantasy reimagined as a vehicle of destruction. Marvel's villain turned into a literal killing machine long before the MCU made characters like Thanos household names. It's one of those details that makes you shake your head and say, only in the 80s. Because while today Marvel guards its characters tighter than Fort Knox back then, they let their goblin ride shotgun with Stephen King straight into cinematic insanity. 19. The truck nobody can agree on. You'd think identifying a movie truck would be easy. It's got a VIN number, write a title, some paperwork, but not in the world of Maximum Overdrive. To this day, fans can't agree on what exact truck the Green Goblin monster actually was. Some swear it was a 1977 White Western Star 4800. Others insist it's a 1976. A few even argue for a 1981 model, a 5-year window of confusion that drives vehicle enthusiasts absolutely mad. How does a simple question, like what truck, is that turn into a decades-long argument? Well, the production team heavily modified the rig for filming. They swapped parts, changed panels, added a huge fiberglass mask, and painted over nearly every identifying mark. By the time the goblin face was attached, you couldn't tell what year or even what model it had started as. It's become an internet rabbit hole. Forum threads go on for pages filled with experts analyzing blurry screenshots and zoomed-in photos pointing out grille shapes, cab angles, and bolt patterns like they're decoding a sacred relic. One person swears the bumper belongs to a Western star. Another insists the mirrors match a white model. And the best part, no one has ever found official production records to confirm it. The truth may have vanished with the studio paperwork lost somewhere in the archives of Universal Pictures, or perhaps never documented at all. Stephen King, of course, didn't care. He wasn't chasing authenticity. He just wanted a truck that looked terrifying barreling down a highway. And on that front mission, accomplished. Maybe that's what makes it legendary, the mystery itself. Because in the end, a monster is scarier when you can't quite define what it is. 18. The cooling system nightmare. The Green Goblin mask looked incredible on screen. Glowing eyes, wicked grin, and a presence that screamed evil incarnate. But for the poor crew trying to keep the truck alive during filming, it was mechanical hell. Sea trucks need constant airflow to the radiator to prevent overheating. Now imagine covering that radiator with a gigantic fiberglass mask shaped like a goblin's face. It's like making a professional athlete run a marathon while wearing a plastic bag over their head. According to crew members and mechanics who worked on maximum overdrive, the truck overheated constantly. Every time they tried to shoot a chase scene in the sweltering North Carolina heat, the temperature gauge would spike, forcing everyone to stop and let the villain cool down. The crew had to plan takes around the truck's ability to breathe, or rather its inability to. The production team tried every trick in the book auxiliary fans' ice packs around the engine, in short bursts of driving followed by long cooldowns. But nothing really solved the problem. The mask simply trapped too much heat. So behind every menacing shot of the truck speeding toward its victims, there's a very different reality. A crew anxiously watching the temperature needle praying. It wouldn't redline before the director yelled, "Cut." It's a beautiful irony when you think about it. In a movie about machines rebelling against humans, the truck itself was rebelling against its own costume. It didn't want to perform. It didn't want to move. It just wanted to stop. Maybe the Green Goblin truck wasn't acting at all. Maybe it was method performing, dying a little with every take to bring Stephen King's nightmare to life. 17. The Happy Toys company that never was. If you look closely at the trailer behind the Green Goblin truck, you'll notice something that feels wrong. Painted across the side are the words Happy Toys complete with a smiling cartoon clown. It looks cheerful innocent. Until you remember, this truck is mowing people down. That twisted irony wasn't a coincidence. The production design team did it on purpose. They wanted to contrast the childlike idea of joy and playfulness with the horror of unstoppable violence, a visual metaphor that could only have come from Stephen King's imagination. King has always understood that the scariest monsters come from corrupting what we trust. An ice cream truck playing music in the dark, a clown with a too-wide smile, a toy company delivering death instead of delight. Happy Toys is genius-level satire buried inside a B-movie. It represents innocence, weaponized the idea that even things meant to make children happy can turn on us. And then there's that clown face. Not as famous as the Green Goblin mask, but arguably creepier. Its painted grin is too sharp, too deliberate, like it knows something the audience doesn't. The juxtaposition is haunting. A demonic goblin leading the way, and a smiling clown following right behind. Two faces of horror rolling together down the American highway. That's what makes this truck unforgettable. It's not just scary because it kills. It's scary because it pretends to be something pure. And in the world of maximum overdrive, nothing innocent stays innocent for long. It's the ultimate Stephen King touch. Take something wholesome, twist it until it screams, and watch the audience realize how fragile their comfort really was. 16. Stephen King's one and only directing credit. Here's where things start to make sense, or maybe make even less sense, depending on how you look at it. Maximum Overdrive wasn't just written by Stephen King. It was directed by him. His first film as a director, and his last. Why? Because the experience was pure chaos. King has admitted in interviews that he was coked out of his mind during most of the production. His own words, He barely remembers filming it. And that explains a lot. The decision to put a giant Green Goblin mask on a truck cocaine decision. Branding the killer vehicle with Happy Toys cocaine decision. Letting the truck's eyes glow in certain scenes. Definitely a cocaine decision. King later laughed about it, calling the movie a moron's masterpiece. Even critic Roger Ebert gave it a single star, calling it a disaster. And yet, somehow, that disaster became legendary. Because Maximum Overdrive isn't just a bad movie. It's a fever dream caught on film, a window into Stephen King's wildest, most unrestrained impulses. No studio executives, no filters, just raw, delirious imagination, running wild with a film crew. And at the heart of that madness stood the Green Goblin Truck, a physical embodiment of King's own creative chaos. It was loud, unstable, unpredictable, and somehow unforgettable. After the movie flopped, King never directed again. He went back to writing, where his monsters could exist safely on the page instead of overheating on the road. But that one cocaine-fueled summer of 1986 gave the world something no one else ever could. A truck so bizarre, so insane, that it transcended its movie and became its own legend. The Green Goblin Truck wasn't just his creation, it was his confession. 15. The glowing eyes that may or may not have worked. You've probably seen it, that eerie shot where the Green Goblin Truck seems to look back at you, its eyes glowing like something alive. But here's the weird part. No one can agree if those eyes ever actually worked. Some crew members swear the production team installed real lights inside the mask. Others claim it was just clever cinematography reflections, filters, or post-production tricks. The truth is foggy, buried under decades of fan speculation and half-remembered stories. And that mystery is perfect. Because even if the lights never technically functioned, the illusion did. Audiences remember those glowing eyes the same way. They remember Freddy Krueger's glove, or Jason's hockey mask, a visual burned into pop culture memory. But imagine the nightmare of wiring that thing. A heavy fiberglass sculpture mounted to a semi-truck barreling down highways, vibrating, slamming into cars, and baking in the North Carolina heat. Now add electrical components to it. That's a recipe for disaster. If the lights ever did work, they likely failed often. Every bump in the road could cause a short circuit. Every take risked burning out a wire. And yet in the chaos, the image survived. Even a flicker of light was enough to convince audiences this thing was possessed. It's poetic in a way. The same director who barely remembered filming the movie created one of horror's most enduring visuals, not through flawless design, but through imperfection and chaos. Whether those eyes were truly glowing or just imagined, they did their job. They stared right through the screen and into your nightmares. Sometimes the scariest things in cinema aren't the effects that worked, they're the ones that almost didn't. 14. The rocket-powered destruction. If you're going to kill a killer truck, you can't just crash it or blow a tire. You need something big, something loud. So naturally, Stephen King decided to end his monster's reign of terror with a rocket launcher. That's right. The Green Goblin Truck didn't die quietly. It went out in a blaze of glory, literally blown apart on screen by a missile. Because in the world of Maximum Overdrive, subtlety wasn't even in the vocabulary. The explosion you see in the final act wasn't CGI, of course. This was 1986, back when practical effects meant real fire, real metal, and real destruction. The crew used controlled charges to make it look like the truck took a direct hit, sending debris flying and smoke curling around that demonic grin. It was cinematic chaos and it looked awesome, but it also meant destroying one of the film's most expensive props. Reports suggest they may have used multiple masks or backup trucks for the sequence. One of the Green Goblin faces was either blown off or burned beyond repair during filming. The irony. After surviving its on-screen explosion, the real truck still wasn't done. It continued to exist, battered and charred, moving from the set to a salvage yard, almost like a horror villain refusing to die. In the movie, it takes a rocket to stop the Goblin Truck. In real life, not even an explosion could erase it. It lingered, a half-melted symbol of King's madness, resting in pieces but far from forgotten. Because in true 1980s fashion, the rule was simple. If you can blow it up, you absolutely should. And if you're Stephen King directing your only movie, you make sure it goes out with fireworks. 13. The salvage yard years. After the cameras stopped rolling after the smoke cleared and the credits faded, the Green Goblin Truck didn't retire to a museum or a Hollywood warehouse. It was dumped abandoned like a washed-up celebrity in a salvage yard in Wilmington, North Carolina. There it sat among rusted car shells and twisted metal, its once terrifying grin chipped, burned, and weather-worn. The fiberglass mask had deep scorch marks. The jaw was cracked. Teeth were missing. The tongue looked half melted. What had been the menacing face of mechanical evil now looked more like a casualty of its own stardom. For years, locals wandered past it without realizing what they were looking at. To them, it was just another broken truck, maybe part of a parade float, maybe a failed art project. Few knew that this was the Green Goblin Truck, the officially licensed Marvel-faced monster from Stephen King's one and only film as a director. It's a strange kind of poetic justice. In Maximum Overdrive, the machines rise up against humanity, only to be destroyed in the end. And in real life, this cinematic machine suffered the same fate, discarded and forgotten. But that's the magic of cult cinema. Nothing truly dies if someone cares enough to remember. And someone did. A collector named Tim Shockey would eventually stumble across this battered relic and decide it deserved another life. He didn't see a burned-out truck. He saw a history, strange, ridiculous, beautiful history. The salvage yard years became the Green Goblin Truck's purgatory, a period of quiet decay before its unlikely resurrection. It was sleeping, waiting for the right person to bring it back from the dead. Because like every horror icon, the Goblin Truck wasn't done haunting people just yet. 12. Tim Shockey's 20-year yard ornament. In 1987, 1 year after Maximum Overdrive hit theaters and promptly crashed and burned, an Ohio collector named Tim Shockey did something extraordinary. He bought the Green Goblin Truck. Not a replica, not a prop piece, the actual battle-damaged, screen-used monster itself. The catch: it was a wreck. Burned paint, broken fiberglass, melted wiring. The face looked like it had survived an apocalypse, which in a way it had. Most people would have sent it straight to the crusher. But not Tim. He hauled it home to Pike County, Ohio, and parked it in his front yard. And there it stayed. For 20 years. Neighbors would drive by and see this giant demonic face staring out from the grass, teeth-bared eyes hollow, still defiant after decades of decay. Imagine being the mailman pulling up to that house every day. Morning, Tim. Truck still alive. He didn't hide it in a garage. He didn't restore it right away. He just had it. Like the world's most terrifying lawn ornament. Through snow, rain, and blistering heat, the Goblin Truck remained. Its once bright green faded to dull olive. The fiberglass cracked. But somehow, it never fully fell apart. People who stumbled across it years later said it felt eerie, like the truck was just waiting for someone to remember what it once was. And in 2011, Tim finally did. He decided to bring it back, to rebuild the monster that Stephen King and Marvel accidentally created together. It would take patience, skill, and a bit of madness. But then again, that's exactly what made the truck legendary in the first place. Because even after 20 years of silence, that grin still dared the world to look away. 11. The restoration controversy. When Tim Shockey finally decided to restore the Green Goblin Truck in 2011, horror fans everywhere celebrated at first. After all, this was a resurrection no one thought possible. The long-forgotten monster from Maximum Overdrive was about to roar again. But soon, celebration turned into argument. See, restoring a piece of movie history isn't as simple as slapping on new paint and calling it done. It's about how you restore it. Do you bring it back to how it looked in the movie? Do you preserve its damage as part of its story? Or do you rebuild it to what you think it should have been? Every choice changes the legacy. Fix the cracked jaw. You erase its battle scars. Leave it broken. You risk losing it entirely to time. It's the cinematic version of the ship of Theseus. Paradox: if you replace every piece, is it still the same truck? Some fans argued the goblin should be left exactly as it was found, burned, chipped, and terrifying in its decay. Others wanted the full Hollywood restoration, gleaming green paint, sharp teeth, and that maniacal grin reborn in fiberglass perfection. Shockey had to choose a path. In the end, he aimed for balance, honoring the past while saving it for the future. He patched, repainted, and reinforced the structure, making it roadworthy again, but keeping some visible wear. The monster would live again, scarred, but proud. Yet even that decision split the fandom. Some hailed him as a savior of cinema history. Others accused him of repainting the soul right off the truck. But one thing's certain. Without Tim's work, the Green Goblin Truck would have crumbled into dust. Instead, it got a second chance, reborn from rust controversy and pure love for movie madness. 10. The cult following that won't die. When Maximum Overdrive hit theaters in 1986, critics tore it apart. Roger Ebert called it a moron movie. Stephen King himself later admitted it was terrible. And yet the Green Goblin Truck refused to die. In the decades that followed, something strange happened. While the movie faded into obscurity, the truck became immortal. It started appearing at horror conventions, fan meetups, and car shows. Collectors built miniature replicas. Artists painted fan posters. Entire online communities sprang up dedicated solely to tracking its history. There's even an officially licensed 1/64 scale die-cast version right up there with the Batmobile, the DeLorean, and KITT. That's a huge deal for a vehicle from a one-star movie. It's proof that sometimes the weirdest creations outlive their origins. But why does this truck of all things endure? Maybe it's because it's the perfect symbol of cinematic insanity. A licensed Marvel villain strapped to a semi in a Stephen King fever dream. Something so ridiculous, so unfiltered, that it crosses from bad to brilliant. You couldn't make this movie today. Marvel would never allow it, studios would never approve it, and King would never attempt it again. That's exactly why it fascinates people. It's a relic from a time when filmmaking was reckless, fearless, and wonderfully stupid. Fans see it as more than a prop. It's a monument to chaos. Every convention photo, every replica, build every late-night Reddit thread about its whereabouts adds another layer to the legend. The Green Goblin Truck may have started as a disaster, but now it's something much rarer. A failure that found immortality through pure unapologetic weirdness. The movie died, but the monster lived on. 9. The model confusion that drives fans crazy. As if the debate over the truck's year wasn't enough, the Green Goblin rig has sparked yet another obsession. What exact model it really was. Western Star White. Western Star, a hybrid custom build. No one can agree. The arguments have been raging for decades across forums, Facebook groups, and the holy grail of car spotting websites. The Internet Movie Cars Database, IMCDB. Fans dissect grainy screenshots from VHS copies, comparing the grille pattern, headlight spacing, door angles, and even screw placements like forensic detectives. One camp swears it's a Western Star 4800. Another claims the production used multiple trucks, swapping parts between scenes like Frankenstein's monster, made of steel. And honestly, that might be true. Back in the 1980s, film productions weren't known for keeping detailed vehicle logs. If a truck looked mean, ran well enough to survive a chase scene, and didn't explode prematurely, it was good to go. Continuity came second to chaos. Add to that the layers of modifications, new paint-swapped grills, the enormous fiberglass goblin face, and identifying the original vehicle becomes nearly impossible. It's like trying to determine what kind of bird a phoenix used to be before it burst into flames. For fans, that uncertainty has become part of the fun. Each new theory fuels endless debates, each detailed discovery adds to the lore. Some even suggest that the mystery was intentional, that the film used multiple rigs to enhance the illusion of an unstoppable supernatural machine. Whatever the truth, one thing's clear. The Green Goblin Truck isn't just a vehicle. It's a puzzle. A riddle wrapped in fiberglass and gasoline fumes. And like any good legend, maybe it's better that way. Because once you solve the mystery, the magic fades. 8. the Frankie Faison connection. Long before he became a respected character actor with roles in The Wire and The Silence of the Lambs, Frankie Faison was just a rising performer saying yes to any project that would give him a shot. And that's how he ended up behind the wheel of a demon truck. In Maximum Overdrive, Faison played Handy, the driver of the infamous Green Goblin rig. He wasn't a background extra, he was the man introducing this monster to the story. Handy rolls into the Dixie Boy truck stop early in the film, setting up one of the movie's key locations, and giving the audience their first real look at the Goblin truck in motion. Imagine being a young actor and getting that phone call Stephen King himself wants you for a role. Sounds great, right? Then you get the script and realize you'll be driving a semi with a giant fiberglass goblin head on it through explosions, fire, and chaos. Still, Faison did it. He took it seriously, grounding an otherwise bonkers story with a touch of human realism. And decades later, fans still remember his truck more vividly than any of the film's human characters. There's a certain poetry in that. An actor who went on to star in Oscar-winning films and critically acclaimed TV shows started his career piloting one of cinema's strangest creations. While King was battling his own demons behind the camera, Faison was literally driving one across the screen. Looking back, he probably didn't expect this role to follow him through his entire career. But ask any horror fan about Maximum Overdrive, and they'll tell you Frankie Faison wasn't just in it. He was the guy who unleashed the Goblin truck. And for cult movie lovers, that's a badge of honor no critic's review could ever erase. 7. The overheating that almost killed production. By now you already know the Green Goblin truck had a nasty overheating problem. But the full story is even worse than most fans realize. This wasn't a small hiccup on set. It was a daily disaster that nearly shut down the entire production. The film was shot during the peak of a North Carolina summer, blazing sun, brutal humidity, and asphalt hot enough to fry an egg. Add to that a 10-foot fiberglass goblin face covering the truck's radiator, and you've got a recipe for meltdown. The crew would roll cameras, the truck would roar to life, and within minutes the temperature gauge would spike into the red. Engines screamed, coolant boiled, and shooting had to stop. Mechanics rushed in with fans and buckets of ice, while Stephen King stood there sweating and swearing, watching his cinematic villain literally die in front of him. The problem became so bad that the crew had to rewrite shooting schedules around it. They filmed shorter takes, avoided daytime heat whenever possible, and sometimes even shot scenes at night just to keep the truck alive, long enough to get a few usable seconds of footage. It wasn't glamorous movie magic, it was survival. Imagine trying to create a horror icon while babysitting a truck that couldn't run for more than 3 minutes at a time. And yet somehow, they pulled it off. Every time you see that monstrous rig barreling toward the camera, there's a team of exhausted crew members just out of frame praying the engine doesn't catch fire. It's one of those behind-the-scenes struggles that make the final product even more fascinating, because in Maximum Overdrive, even the villain itself was trying to quit. But the crew wouldn't let it. They didn't just build a monster, they fought to keep it alive. 6. The Happy Toys clown that nobody talks about. Everyone remembers the Green Goblin mask, that grinning cartoonish face of death. But there was another villain hiding in plain sight, one most people never noticed, until years later the clown on the trailer. Yes, behind the goblin-faced cab was a full-size trailer branded with Happy Toys, featuring a massive hand-painted clown face staring out from the back doors. At first glance, it looked like an ordinary logo, something you might see on a delivery truck for a toy company. But look closer, and the image turns deeply unsettling. The smile is too wide. The eyes are too knowing. It's the kind of face that feels off the longer you stare at it. The production designers knew exactly what they were doing. They were creating layered horror, not just in-your-face monsters, but background evil that creeps up on you when you least expect it. While the goblin mask screamed chaos, the clown whispered it. It represented the same twisted irony as the Happy Toys name Innocence turned inside out. A children's toy hauler delivering fear instead of joy. It's the visual prelude to King's later creation. Pennywise, a happy face, hiding malevolence. And the brilliance of it all, most audiences didn't even notice it on first viewing. It sat there in the background, quietly poisoning the atmosphere. But once you saw it, once that grotesque smile registered, you could never unsee it. That's the genius of subtle horror design. The obvious monster draws the eye. The hidden one haunts your memory. The Green Goblin mask may have become iconic, but that painted clown turned the whole truck into something worse, a rolling contradiction between childhood innocence and unstoppable death. A horror symphony led by a goblin backed by a clown. 5. The salvage yard mystery years. Here's the part of the story that even die-hard fans can't piece together. What exactly happened to the Green Goblin Truck between the end of filming in 1986 and Tim Shockey's rescue in 1987? That one missing year has become a riddle, a blank page in the truck's bizarre biography. After the fiery rocket explosion scene, the production wrapped and everyone went home. The truck, now charred and damaged, was left behind in Wilmington, North Carolina. But who made the decision to dump it in a salvage yard? No one really knows. There's no official record, no bill of sale, no memo from the studio saying dispose of Killer Goblin Truck. Maybe Universal Pictures didn't want to pay storage fees. Maybe the prop department considered it unsalvageable. Or maybe in the chaos of wrapping production, someone simply forgot about it, leaving the truck to rot in a corner of cinematic history. For months, it sat surrounded by rusted vehicles half covered in weeds, its grin fading under layers of grime and rain. Salvage workers likely walked past it without realizing what they were looking at. To them, it was just another weird truck, with a creepy face welded on. But imagine that scene, a junkyard filled with dead machines, and in the middle of it, this half-melted goblin still smiling through the rust. It's pure Stephen King imagery, the monster that refuses to die, mocking the passage of time. Some fans speculate it changed hands multiple times during that year. Others think it never moved at all until Tim Shockey stumbled upon it. Whatever the truth, that missing year only deepened the legend. Because nothing makes a horror icon more mysterious than vanishing just long enough for people to start wondering if it's really gone. 4. The die-cast replica validation. You know, a movie vehicle has reached true cult status when it gets immortalized in miniature. And that's exactly what happened to the Green Goblin Truck. Decades after Maximum Overdrive rolled out of theaters and into cinematic obscurity, the company Tough Truck's scale models decided to give the demonic Semi its own 1/64 scale die-cast replica, complete with the Happy Toys trailer and the sinister clown face. For a film critics once called a disaster, that's a shocking badge of honor. Think about what that means. Someone somewhere had to look at the market and say, yes, people want a tiny version of Stephen King's cocaine-fueled murder truck. And they were right. Collectors went wild for it. The replica captured every detail: the sculpted goblin mask, the paint job, the logos, even the specific wear patterns seen in the film. It wasn't some lazy merchandising grab. It was crafted with reverence, a tribute to madness. In the toy world, being immortalized in die-cast means one thing: legacy. You don't get there by being good. You get there by being iconic. The Batmobile has it. The DeLorean from Back to the Future has it. And now so does the Goblin Truck, a villain vehicle from a movie so bad it became unforgettable. For fans, owning that model wasn't just nostalgia. It was validation. Proof that this absurd, chaotic creation had carved out its place in pop culture. A reminder that art doesn't have to be perfect to be legendary. It just has to stick in your brain and refuse to leave. So while the real truck rusted and rotted, the tiny version lived on, sitting proudly on collectors' shelves, a miniature monument to cinematic insanity forged from fiberglass nostalgia, and one very questionable directorial decision. 3. The Stephen King drug admission. Here's the moment where the myth meets the madness. Stephen King has never been shy about his demons, and when it comes to Maximum Overdrive, he's brutally honest. He said it outright: I was coked out of my mind the entire time. That one confession explains nearly everything about the movie's beautiful chaos. The Green Goblin Truck, the killer soda machines, the clown, the sheer unfiltered insanity that bleeds through every frame. King wasn't directing like a seasoned filmmaker. He was living inside his own fever dream, fueled by sleepless night substances and an imagination on overdrive. Every creative decision, from the mask design to the glowing eyes, feels like something made at 3 a.m. by someone convinced they were reinventing cinema. And in a strange way, he kind of was. Because Maximum Overdrive doesn't just reflect King's addiction, it embodies it. It's frantic, disjointed, impulsive, and yet hypnotically compelling. A truck with a Marvel villain's face rampaging through a world gone mad, that's not filmmaking. That's therapy in motion. King later said he barely remembers shooting it, and maybe that's for the best. When asked if he'd ever direct again, his answer was simple. No. Just no. But fans have a different take. They see Maximum Overdrive not as a failure, but as a window, a wild, unfiltered snapshot of the 1980s, when one of the greatest storytellers on Earth lost control of his own story. The Green Goblin Truck wasn't just a movie prop. It was King's subconscious roaring to life on 18 wheels the monster inside him made real. And maybe that's why, for all its madness, we still can't look away. Because deep down, that truck isn't just his creation, it's his confession. 2. The technical marvel nobody appreciates. It's easy to laugh at Maximum Overdrive, now the cheesy dialogue, the absurd premise, the over-the-top carnage. But beneath the chaos was some genuinely impressive craftsmanship. Because creating the Green Goblin Truck wasn't just a design stunt, it was an engineering triumph. Think about it. You're taking a full-size semi-truck, adding a massive fiberglass head to the front, wiring and light stunt rigs, smoke effects, and still expecting it to drive, steer, and survive, take after take. That's not easy. That's borderline impossible. The mask had to be sculpted from lightweight but durable material strong enough to handle highway speeds without ripping apart, yet light enough not to throw off the truck's balance. The team had to calculate how much wind resistance the face would create, how it would affect turning radius, and how to keep the entire contraption from flying off during high-speed chases. And then there's the artistry. The mask wasn't a flat cartoon face, it had to look alive. The sculptors had to translate Marvel's 2D comic design into a 3D monster that looked believable on camera under harsh daylight and flashing headlights alike. Every curve, every shade of green, every contour of that devilish grin was handcrafted to reflect light and emotion like a living creature. Those unsung technicians, sculptors, and mechanics, their names lost in the end credits, made movie magic the hard way. No CGI, no shortcuts, just pure craftsmanship and a lot of heat stroke. So yes, Maximum Overdrive might have been born from chaos, but the Green Goblin Truck stands as a testament to human creativity under pressure. It's what happens when artists and engineers collide literally to bring insanity to life. A cocaine dream maybe, but one built with genius hands. 1. The current status mystery. So where is the Green Goblin Truck today? After all these decades, after the explosions, the scrapyard years, and the long patient restoration, you'd think there'd be a simple answer. But just like everything else about this monster, the truth is wrapped in mystery. We know that in 2011, Tim Shockey began restoring the original truck. We know it appeared at a few conventions like Horror Hound and Comic-Cons, drawing lines of fans who couldn't believe the beast was real. People took photos beside that massive grin, reliving childhood nightmares one snapshot at a time. But after that, things get blurry. Some claim Shockey still owns it, keeping it in storage somewhere in Ohio, only bringing it out for special events. Others swear it was sold quietly to a private collector who prefers to remain anonymous. There are reports of sighting someone seeing it parked behind a warehouse, someone else claiming it showed up at a Halloween parade. No verified proof, no official record. It's almost poetic that the truck itself has become a ghost story, a piece of pop culture horror that refuses to die or be found. The idea that it's still out there somewhere hidden under a tarp waiting for the right moment to roll again gives fans chills. In a world where every movie artifact is tracked, documented, and monetized, the Green Goblin Truck remains defiantly elusive. A relic of an era that didn't care about continuity or copyright, only chaos and spectacle. Maybe it's best that way. Because myths don't belong in museums. They belong in the dark corners of imagination, waiting to be rediscovered. 40 years later, Maximum Overdrive has faded, but the truck hasn't. It endures as a symbol of everything wild, reckless, and unforgettable about 1980s cinema. And somewhere out there, maybe in a dusty barn or hidden lot, that wicked grin is still watching, waiting for the engine to start again.